Hi, this is Adrian, and welcome to the new episode of DoYouMQ. DoYouMQ is a podcast where we discuss enterprise messaging and interview IBM MQ experts to share their insights and knowledge on the vital role of message queuing in today's world. Today my guest is Martin Evans, IBM MQ Technical Product Manager. Hello Martin.
Hi Adrian.
Right, so for today's podcast topic, we'll be discussing MQ automated deployment to OpenShift. Right, I think the most important question is, what are the main advantages to automated deployment on OpenShift?
Well, I would say the same as any automated deployment, really. When you automate deployments, I think the main thing you gain really is system integrity. The repeatability, the ability to be able to recreate the same configuration consistently across environments, and to be able to track changes, things like that. So all the things that kind of make that system more reliable by being able to continually, make changes in a traceable, trackable way with auditability, so you can see who's making what changes. So it's a lot of the sort of governance that you gain with automation, but also there are other things like speed to deployment, perhaps, it can help with DevOps. I think if you're going to do DevOps, you really must have automation, because you've got to have somebody that can put some of that intelligence that's required for the deployments into the automation so that other people can do it, kind of abstracting away a little bit. So I'd say absolutely essential if you want to maintain the reliability and integrity of your system. If you want to introduce DevOps, I'd say absolutely 100% you need to automate. And I think a lot of DevOps is actually automation. So reliability, system integrity, speed to deployment, DevOps, all those things, I'd say. And, it's a lot of the advantages that you would have gained, just by automating in the past as well. So it's not, these things aren't exclusive to OpenShift, but obviously by bringing them to OpenShift, you gain those same advantages on your OpenShift platform. I think with OpenShift, with the container environment, they sort of embrace automation as well. This declarative approach is very common, and I think that works really well with automation. And I think it's absolutely essential to have that automation around your declarative approach and that mechanism for OpenShift.
Well, that sounds like there is a lot of upsides, and certainly it's something that people probably will aim to achieve, considering it's so good. But as we all know, everything comes with some downsides. So what are the disadvantages, if there are any?
Yeah. There aren't. I think in a larger state, an enterprise environment, I can't really see any disadvantages to automating, but there is additional complexity. Obviously, you need skills. You need people that can automate the systems, and you're going to have to maintain that automation as well. So if you're writing code to automate it, you're going to have to maintain that code and have people that are skilled. If you've got a really small system, is it worth it? If you've got one system, why not just go through the UI, and write all of the, you're not changing it very often. Why don't you just put the commands in a Word document and just have that as your run book? It's feasible. I think that's valid. But as soon as you start getting into larger number of systems in an enterprise environment, you've got to automate. And I think the additional effort, if you like, of automating will give benefit and rewards quite quickly. You'll get a return on that investment pretty quick.
Yeah, we can clearly see that these advantages overweigh the disadvantages, and it seems like it's a go-to strategy for anything that's bigger than small company and uses multiple systems. Well, now that we know more or less what automation of MQ is all about, can you tell me who is it targeted at?
Yeah, good question. So I think it depends a little bit, and it's probably going to depend a little bit on where you are on that DevOps journey as well. So I would say that it's typically aimed at sysadmins, and it's typically the sysadmins that are doing the automation for that deployment. But more and more, I think developers are starting to want to have some of that control over those things. And kind of the way I look at it is, traditionally you've had your developers and you've had your system admins, and that kind of line's blurring, or that's merging a bit with DevOps, obviously. But I think you've still got, at the edges, you've still got some deep expertise that you won't have in both camps, if you like. So you'll have developers that will perhaps pick up some systems and DevOps skills as you go on that DevOps journey. But you're still going to need, I think you're still going to always have those sysadmins that have got the deep knowledge on the underlying technologies, be it MQ, be it the platform that it's sitting on and stuff like that. So I think the automation is quite squarely aimed at those. If you're doing that DevOps piece, it's that bit in the middle. It's the developer operations kind of thing. The automation, as I said before, if you want to do DevOps, you've got to have automation. So I'd say you're kind of aiming that automation at the developers to some extent as the target audience, if perhaps, but it's the sysadmins that are most likely going to be creating that automation.
Right, I see. And what tools would you recommend?
For OpenShift, I would say that probably the best approach would be to actually leverage some of the tools that come with OpenShift. So OpenShift has GitOps, which is based on Argo CD. So Argo CD is an open source tool used to manage those kind of declarative environments, if you like. So if we take a step back, you would probably want to start with configuration as code, right? So that declarative approach, where you're using your YAMLs and you're declaring how the system should look. You want to get that into something like Git, right? So by getting that into something like Git, a Git repo, you get all that governance and control, and you can leverage those development methodologies to merge things in and control what goes into the environment. It's quite powerful. Then once you've got that and you've determined however you're going to lay out your repositories, obviously there's lots of different ways you can cut that. Small repositories, large repositories, branches, and what have you. But that's perhaps a topic for another day. But once you've established that you've got your definitions, the way you want your system to look in your repository, you can then use something like Argo, which is able to look at that repository and take those YAMLs and that configuration and stand it up in OpenShift. And what it does is it will continually check and compare what you've got in your repo with what's in the system. So you can make a change in Git, and you can either automate it, or you can just have it manual where it will see the change, and you can actually look at the diff within Argo. And it will also look at what's active in the system. So if someone goes into the system and makes a change on the fly that isn't in your configuration, it will flag that up as well. So you'll see that, and you can actually push that out and override that. So you get a lot of governance and visibility of what's going on in the environment. So you can see that the actual runtime, the kind of running environment, doesn't match what you've got in GitOps. It'll flag that up. So that's maybe a change coming through. You may have put those changes through your change control procedures and everything, and they'll be ready to go. So you can release them into the environment. And say equally, if someone goes and starts hacking around within the actual system and just deploying YAMLs themselves, then it will flag that up, and you can override that and spot that. So that's OpenShift GitOps, which is basically Argo CD. The other main tool I would say is Customize, which is a mechanism to modify YAML files. So you can customize your YAML files. So if you had a queue manager YAML, you might want to change things like I don't know, maybe some configuration to do with the disk or whatever, perhaps enabling the web interface or not, the license, the versions and stuff like that. You can use customize to make changes, and you can template. Not template. It's the opposite of templating. I'll come to that in a moment. You can basically patch your YAMLs. So you can start off with a small YAML that perhaps is generic or global for all your queue managers, perhaps some security settings. But then in different environments, you might want to say, well, I want the web browser enabled, the web console enabled in development, but not production. So you can patch that into your production, and you layer these things up. But that is not templating. So the main thing that Customize gives you is this patching and merging versus templating, which is the Helm approach. But what you can do, and what I've done, is you can actually template your Customize YAMLs as well with a little bit of a tweak. You can apply a template approach as well, and I think that brings the best of both worlds. So with a little bit of a plugin to customize, quite a simple customize plugin, you can say, right, I'm going to have all that power of patching and merging my YAMLs in, and I'm also going to template it as well. So you might want to change things like an environment variable name for the target environment, or like you might have a template for a queue manager and you want to perhaps just change the queue manager name but keep the same template all the way through. So you can do things like that.
Well, it seems there's plenty of tools to get the job done, and you have great selection of it. Now, I have another question. Well, is the automated deployment available on other platforms, or is it exclusive to OpenShift? And are there plans to expand it to other platforms if it's only available on OpenShift right now?
So some of the tools I've mentioned, the brand name or the branding in OpenShift GitOps is based on Argo CD, and you'll quite often find that with a lot of the products in OpenShift. They've got those sort of source, open source. I can't remember the right phrase for it, but where they're seeded from. They often have those, and so, for instance, Argo CD can run on any Kubernetes platform or against it. Same with Customize. Customize is built into Kubernetes now, so that's all there. So no, they're not exclusive to OpenShift. Some of those things are exclusive to container platforms, like Customize and Argo. Really they're container. But the concept of automating, there's still a lot of other products out there that can work on other platforms. No, they're not exclusive to OpenShift, and like a lot of things, they'll just run on regular Kubernetes platforms.
Right. So as long as you have a container platform, you can deploy automated MQ and leverage most of those tools.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I have one more question for you, Martin. What are the future plans regarding automated deployment? It seems like it's quite an important piece of technology, so I assume that there's plenty to do in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working quite hard to produce reference architecture. Sometimes it's called the production deployment guide. I'll get you the URL for that, and perhaps you can put it in the notes. So what we're trying to do is say, this is how we would do it. It's quite prescriptive. But it gives you a good start. So we've created some examples and code for completely automating the deployment of MQ, actually some of the other products like ACE as well.
Seems like it's a bit of a tutorial for
it. Very much so, actually. Yeah. There's two parts to it. There is a tutorial that you can go through that's step by step. All the source code is there and available for you to take. So there's Customize in there. We've also, actually for MQ, what's quite nice is we've put a mechanism in there that allows you to dynamically update your queue manager as well. So you don't have to redeploy if you want to add queues or make changes to queues, things like that. That's all in there. And then the little extension or plugin I mentioned that we're looking at for Customize to allow you to have that merge capability, merge and patch capability, or the strength of Customize with the power also of say Helm, where you can template things. We're going to try and put that in as well. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work on that in that reference architecture space. So these aren't all native, these aren't tools of MQ. They're not part of MQ. They're in the sort of ecosystem around MQ. But what we're doing is we're trying to say, well, look, here's a way you can do it. This is the way we sort of recommend you do it, almost, and then you can take that and run with that exactly as it is if you want to, or you can just take bits of it and say, no, actually, I like that little bit that you've done there to give me dynamic updates to MQ without having to restart the queue manager. I'll just take that. You could do that. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like plenty of work ahead of you.
Yeah, and I think that's the channel we'll probably stick with for the automation, helping people, giving them guidance through that. And there's some really good tutorials on there that you can take step-by-step guide,
Well, Martin, that was really insightful. Thank you very much for showing up on the podcast, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
You're welcome. Thank you.